Hi, hello, and welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be looking at my playoff predictions, kind of updating where we're at, and then also making my predictions for the Western Conference and Eastern Conference finals, and then all the way through to the finals. If anybody watched the video, I guess, that I put out right before the playoffs started with me filling out the bracket, what I had here is in the first round was pretty accurate, actually. The only matchup I had wrong in terms of the winner was the Lakers and Wolves series. I had the Lakers winning that one in 6. Minnesota ended up winning that one in 5. I kind of dove in a little bit to that series on the last podcast episode. So if you're interested in more of my thoughts on that, I guess go check out that one. But yeah, wasn't really prepared for the Wolves, Gobert especially, and Julius Randle, honestly, both stepping up and playing some of their best playoff basketball that they have so far in their careers. And then Luka not looking 100%, and then the size factor for sure coming back to bite the Lakers in the butt in a major way. And then also Ant outplaying LeBron and Luka in at least one, but maybe even multiple games this series was big as well. So that brings the Wolves on into the second round, which is already completed when I'm recording this. I guess I should have mentioned that I'm recording this on Monday, May 19th. So the Western Conference Finals game 1 actually starts tomorrow. I'll try to get this out before then. But the Wolves won this series in 5 against the Golden State Warriors, which in the first round, I also had the Warriors winning in 7 against the Rockets. That series was definitely very back and forth, went about the way that I was anticipating. I also had Denver in 7 against the Clippers, which ended up happening. I had OKC sweeping the Grizzlies, and that came to fruition as well. And then over here in the second round in the West, OKC versus Denver. That series actually turned out to be more of a battle than I was anticipating. I thought OKC would win it in 6 and kind of like more of an easy 6, like closer to 5 than 7, to be honest. But the Nuggets really put up a really big fight all the way up until the bitter end there in game 7. I should say the bitter end, the like at halftime, basically. It was when the fight for the Nuggets kind of stopped because that game wasn't very close at all by the end of it. It was for the majority of the first half, though. I think it was 41-42 or something like that at one point. And the Nuggets were up early in the first quarter as well. Like 21-10, I believe, was the score at one point. But then over here in the East, I had Cleveland dropping one game to the Heat, but they ended up sweeping them. I think that ended up being the largest point differential in NBA history for a 4-game sweep. So, a blowout of historic fashion took place in this one. I actually enjoyed Zach Lowe's take in saying that the Cleveland Cavaliers deserve to draft one player from the Heat moving forward that could, join the Cavs moving on to the second round because of how badly they beat them. It would have helped them out quite a bit, honestly, but maybe not even enough to change things in the next round, which jumping to that, the Indiana Pacers upset the Cavs 4-1, so finished it in 5. I had the Cavs taking care of things in 6 games, and honestly, I didn't hear a single person picking the Pacers heading into this series, but that was a wild collapse from the Cavs. I think even more major than what happened in the Lakers series, because the Lakers series at least makes sense. Like, we were all just kind of fooled by what the Lakers did in the regular season to make us overlook, their flaws. But the Cavs, I don't know, it was really just something odd took place in terms of the way that Indiana was able to just outplay and outmuster what the Cavs had going on in each of those games. The Cavs just kind of losing the fight there in game 5. Honestly, in that, I think it was game 4 that was the major blowout at one point, at least. I think the end made it look closer than it actually was. But at one point, it was like a 50-something point game. But back to the first round, the Pacers beat the Bucks in 5 games as well. So the Pacers have just been rolling. Obviously, the Damian Lillard injury, big factor in that one. But still, the Pacers took care of business. I had that series going 7, though, because I was kind of anticipating Damian Lillard to be more available. And then also just the greatness of Giannis taking care of things a little bit, making it more of a tough series for the Pacers. And also, I was not anticipating the Pacers to be quite as good as they have been in this postseason. Tyrese Haliburton, especially stepping up the way that he has been huge. And then the Knicks and the Pistons in the first round, I actually had that one going 6, just like it did in real life. And that series actually ended up being a lot closer than I thought it would be. Like, this was a very close 6-game series. I think there were multiple of these games that Pistons fans kind of deservedly felt like at least they weren't given a fair chance, there at the end. I think their opinions could range from that all the way to like, some of those games were stolen, at least one of them, to be honest honest, I think that is a understandable reaction for Detroit fans. They did put up a very good fight. Very impressed with where this team is at now in comparison to last season. Obviously going 14-68, one of the biggest turnarounds in NBA history, if not the biggest. And the Celtics taking care of things against the Magic in 5 games is also what I had predicted. But then the second round is where it got ugly. I think I forgot to mention my prediction over here that I updated after, the Lakers were knocked out when we knew the matchup was going to be Minnesota and Golden State. I had Minnesota winning in 6, ended up being 5. And then the Knicks and Celtics series, I had Boston in 6 before, the playoffs even started. This was my prediction on that one. I didn't update any of the predictions if the same teams both made it in there. I just kept my original prediction. I only updated it if one of the teams I had in the matchup had been knocked out. I did have the series going 6, so I did get that. But I had the wrong team winning. Obviously, Boston going down 2-0 at the start of the series at home was a huge factor. And then Tatum obviously getting his Achilles torn in game 4, I want to say, was the other thing that just, kind of ruined their chance of coming back in this series, to be quite honest. But yeah, I think they really lost it when they dug themselves that big hole at the start for the most part. They did obviously still have a chance. I thought they were the better team. Even without Jason Tatum, I thought they were not the better team at that point, but still a team worthy of competing, in the playoffs against this Knicks team, but really against any team in the East for that matter. That's just how, stacked the Boston Celtics roster is 1 through 8. But then also the Porzingis health factor, him just being a complete zero this series was another thing that threw a wrench into the whole scheme. So neither of the teams that I had in the Eastern Conference Finals made it in here. And also, obviously I had the Lakers in here in the West. And I'm pretty sure those were the overall favorites across the NBA world to make it to the Final Four, were the 4 that I actually predicted. I want to say, I'm not completely sure on that. That would be my guess anyways. Pretty sure the Lakers were the favorite down here. I'm pretty sure that was the consensus Final Four. So it's pretty wild that we barely got OKC in here. If Denver would have won yesterday, this would be a wide open Final Four. But, with OKC making it in here, they rightfully are the favorites. I don't think it should be like insane favorites because I think Minnesota, honestly, any of these teams could give them a run for their money. From what we've seen in these playoffs, I think anything is possible. But yeah, it's going to be hard to go against the logic of how good of a team OKC has been all season and how I think Minnesota is not really built to compete with OKC the same way they are built to compete with a Warriors or a Lakers, or a Denver for that matter. I don't think those advantages that they have over those teams are going to be quite as big when you are going into a matchup against the Thunder. But who knows? They could definitely give them a run for their money, especially if Julius Randle keeps playing like the best player in the world. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to have this series going 6, I'll say. That's going to be my prediction. I don't feel great about the number. I could see really anything from 5 to 7, to be honest. I would be surprised if it was a sweep, I would think. But, a 7-game series really wouldn't surprise me. But I think 6 is probably the sweet spot. So I'll move OKC on to the finals here. And I just noticed that I have the seeds already written in here for some odd reason. And then over here in the East, I'll have the Pacers, I think, pull this one out. This one I think is going to be a close one. I'll make it go 7. I just think the Pacers are a lot deeper than what the Knicks have right now. And I think one of the biggest things that we've learned from these playoffs is not even these playoffs in particular, but the past several years has been, teams run out of gas when you're playing your guys a heavy minutes load. I think Denver even went farther than they should have when you think about it that way, with how gassed all of their players were. I think Aaron Gordon being hampered in game 7 of this series was really the nail in the coffin for them. But yeah, so I'm kind of using that logic a little bit with the Knicks over here as well. And also that's exactly what happened to them last year, was all their guys were beaten and bruised by the end of it. This is farther than they made it last year, and they are still much more healthy than they were, last season. But I'm going to bet on the depth of Indiana, and also just how well they've played to this point has been impressive. I think even more impressive than the Knicks, to be quite honest, although the Knicks have had a great playoffs as well. But I do think Jalen Brunson is going to have a great series, just like last season, how, they had TJ McConnell trying to guard him. And one thing that we've learned from Jalen Brunson these past couple of years is that you can't put a small point guard on him, even though he is a small point guard in and of himself. He is very stocky, very sturdy, and he will just back down and abuse a small guy if you put him on him. So you want to guard him with length, or at the very least, if you don't have insane length on him, you want another sturdy, smaller guy, maybe like a Marcus Smart, or although he is very long and so is Lou Dort. So those weren't great examples. but like, or maybe like a Kyle Lowry back in his prime as a, more of a girthy guy, to guard him. So I do think Aaron Nesmith will probably be one of the best guys to throw on him, to be honest. Maybe Nembhard a little bit, although he's not super strong or like long in comparison to like, a Sar Thompson, who I think has done the best job on Jalen Brunson these past couple of years now in the playoffs, to be honest. So I do think that's kind of the one factor that will be scary for Indiana. But other than that, I'm going to lean Indiana in the other facets of the game. So I'll bring Indiana into the finals here, and I'm going to take the OKC Thunder, and I'll say 6 games here to win the NBA title and become the 2025 world champions. Shout out Noah Lyles. Yeah, those are my predictions. Thank you guys for watching the video, and please enjoy watching the rest of these playoffs. I'll see you guys next video.